So despite my growing disdain for the whole American political climate with fucking psychopaths on the right wing and the left wing just spouting all sorts of mind-numbingly soul-crushing bullshit that just would make any sane human being want to get the nuclear launch codes and bomb this worthless hellhole of a planet into oblivion, I have decided to read a lot of Captain America, specifically the Ed Brubaker and Nick Spencer run with bits and pieces of the Rick Remender run that I read beforehand in between them. And the reason I've done this is because of specifically Secret Empire, which I will review separately at the very tail end of this video. And Secret Empire's whole premise was founded by the idea of Captain America always being a Hydra agent. Now, of course, there were more details revealed later on in the ongoing series, such as the Red Skull using a cosmic cube to basically alter Captain America's backstory so you can basically make his worst enemy his greatest asset, which is something that Brubaker himself actually kind of almost did in his own run, which I will get into right now. And these runs are very, very strange in the way they execute things and the things that they accomplish. And I feel like Nick Spencer's run kind of combines the best elements of both runs. See, the thing with the Ed Brubaker Captain America, now that I've actually gone through 50 issues of it, I haven't read it from beginning to end completely, but I did read the core ongoing series from issue 1 to 50, covering everything from the apparent death of the Red Skull to Captain America, Bucky kind of solidifying himself as Captain America. And the thing with Brubaker Captain America is that it's a really tense book where with one big overarching storyline. From issue 1 to 50, the characters are almost constantly battling the same threat, this constant struggle against a big corporate conglomerate that is run by the Red Skull and uses various Hydra tactics, various Hydra commanders and Captain America villains to constantly try and wear down the heroes, to break S.H.I.E.L.D., to break the American government, to manipulate them while they're not even aware of it, and to just create this constant sense of tension, that the heroes are always being pressed by a far smarter, far greater adversary who can completely obliterate them at any given moment, and one wrong move is going to get everybody horribly killed or mutilated. And it creates this constant air of tension throughout the entire book where it feels like any wrong step and everything could really go to hell for the good guys. And the good guys, even when they win, those victories are very costly, they're very hard fought, they're very physically and emotionally demanding, and tension really is the definitive word when it comes to the Ed Brubaker run. And the Brubaker run also did a good job of making you interested in the Captain America world. It has a lot of characters from the older comic books, a lot of obscure characters, and it makes them all integral pieces of the storyline. And this also kind of brings up the main problem of the Brubaker run, where you don't really get invested into Steve Rogers himself. You get invested in Sharon Carter and Bucky, even Black Widow and Falcon. But Steve Rogers himself, because he kind of does die by issue 25 and he is gone for the rest of it, and Brubaker only really goes back to Captain America, the Steve Rogers version of him in like the very tail end of his run, he doesn't really get a chance to really shine as a character. Captain America is kind of just the guy everybody respects, and he is kind of being affected the most by what's happening around him. But it does really make you care about Captain America as a person, but it does make you really like the world Captain America has around him, this world of constant political thrillers, spy espionage combined with crazy Nazi super science. It's a really unique little universe that the character has for himself. And this is the biggest strength of the Rick Remender run, where Brubaker wasn't so much as interested in making you love Captain America himself as a character as so much as he was about making this an interesting world and an interesting tense storyline that goes on for dozens upon dozens of issues. The Rick Remender run was more, I want to say serialized, but even that's weird because there are general through lines that happen from the beginning to the end of his run. But the whole thing with the Rick Remender one is that that's the moment where I really like Steve Rogers as a character. That's the moment where I really connect with him as a person, and not just with the cool shit he does and says, and the cool shit that happens to and around him. That's really the run that'll make you a fan of Steve Rogers as a human being, warts and all, whereas the Brubaker run wasn't really like that. And it's really interesting the fact that the Brubaker and Rick Remender runs kind of directly follow one another. And the Nick Spencer run is kind of like the next big run on Captain America. And what I find really fascinating is that the Nick Spencer stuff manages to combine both of the elements of the Brubaker stuff and the Rick Remender stuff. Because despite Captain America being a Hydra agent and doing some morally reprehensible things, you still get a really good feel for the guy. You still understand where this guy is coming from. You know how and why he thinks the way he thinks. And the book not only manages to make you like the guy, but it also does a really good job of making him kind of like the Red Skull of the Brubaker run. See, because Captain America is basically a double agent who's working for Hydra and the main characters, but he also has his own dreams and aspirations for Hydra and the entire world, you have this really interesting situation where Captain America is this really kind of likable and understandable villain protagonist, where he is doing lots of backstabbing, he is manipulating people who genuinely consider him to be like the beacon of truth, justice, and the American way, just to kind of steal Superman shit for a while. But he also has a deep-rooted respect for the other superheroes. He respects Tony, he respects Bucky, he does care about these people, but the dream, as he understands it through his Hydra-filtered, backstory, is the overall main goal, and he doesn't really hesitate to sacrifice people that he even loves and cares about for that goal, with the possible exception of Sharon Carter, who might just be the big chink in his armor. And you create this really interesting situation where in the Nick Spencer run, where you have like this big storyline that's, constantly playing around with a million different pieces of the Captain America mini universe, with Bucky and Baron Zemo, who easily gets some of the most interesting shit in this entire book. His relationship with Captain America is probably one of the most fascinating friendships I've ever seen. It's actually a really good reason for how retconning things is not necessarily a bad thing, just in and out of itself. And also, like I said, does the Rick Remender thing where you actually feel for the guy. You see Steve Rogers in the Hydra camp. So he's taken to this camp where they, train Hydra agents for the future, and they have field tests and they have strategic classes and all that shit. And imagine if Slytherin was its own house that just had its own Hogwarts directly associated with it. And because Steve Rogers is still physically inferior, he can't keep up with the other students. He can't, run as fast as them. He can't fight as fast as them. And that kind of makes him unpopular with the teachers. But because Steve Rogers is at the core of himself the same character he always is, this guy who truly believes in the dream, this guy who wants to help people, who wants to save the world, who has this great tactical mind, who's able to inspire other people to follow him just by standing next to him. Because he has all of these elements in spite of being in this Hydra agent cap, a lot of the professors see great potential in him despite him being deficient and initially useless in their eyes. And then you get to what Cap does in the main storyline, which is, like I said, playing everybody against one another. And much like Red Skull and Ed Brubaker's run, you really do get the sense that Cap is a tactical mastermind. And that sounds not overly surprising because Cap's intellect has been showcased many, many times. But it's never been this big of a deal. You've never really seen Captain America operate on this big of a level where he is literally Tywin Lannistering the shit out of everybody. It's actually really fascinating to see how he's able to kind of betray people he genuinely respects and cares about and still feel remorse for that, but still be dedicated to the cause. And I think that people who were kind of detractors for the book should really check this out just to make a big distinction between Hydra and the Red Skull, like the way Nick Spencer's Captain America does between them. Because Captain America is not a blind, obedient servant of the Red Skull. He's not, murdering people. He's not overly villainous. He is just Steve Rogers and his core values filtered through Hydra. And he believes in the purest version of the Hydra dream. And this is where his secret conflict with the Red Skull comes in. Because the Red Skull only really believes in the values of Hydra because it serves himself, because it lets him be the most powerful guy in the world, because it lets him manipulate people, kill people indiscriminately, and through Hydra he could attain ultimate power. And so, in the eyes of Steve Rogers, he's not Hydra. He's just a megalomaniac who's using Hydra as a way to make himself the most powerful man in the world. And he doesn't give a shit about improving society. He doesn't give a shit about actually making people the best they can be. He's only interested in doing so, making them the best they can be, so that he can use and discard them however he sees fit. And so he can have an army of endless mooks who are all really, really badass, but he doesn't really believe in anything besides his own megalomaniacal ego. And that's a really interesting conflict in and out of itself, to see that despite both of them technically being Hydra, Red Skull is nothing but kind of a twisted Nazi perversion of what Hydra is and what Hydra stands for, and Captain America, the Hydra agent, is actually what Hydra actually stands for. And that's just really fascinating just talking about it. And then we get to Secret Empire number 0. The Secret Empire thing is, the whole premise is that Captain America that Hydra wins, that Hydra takes over the world, and that Captain America is revealed to be a Hydra agent. And like I've said a number of times, I'm not a fan of reviewing things that are incomplete. But because this is just kind of a big comic book release, and it is so kind of important to the overall Captain America Nick Spencer saga, I feel like I kind of want to talk about it. And this is where Cap's credibility as a villain really shoots through the roof. This is where you really see the full extent of his machinations, and everything Nick Spencer sets up in like the span of 15, 16 issues, it all pays off in this one issue. Captain America creating this big, monstrous alien invasion that's going to constantly attack the planet. Him positioning himself as not only the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., but the commander-in-chief of the entire United States forces. Making S.H.I.E.L.D. even more powerful so that when he becomes director, he has even more influence over stuff like the military, the intelligence gathering agencies, him manipulating both his allies and his friends and his enemies, of course, into being in the perfect position he needs them to be so that he can wipe them off the board in one fell swoop. It's just a really fantastic showcase of what Steve Rogers can do if you made him a bad guy, and the results are absolutely frightening. It's really, really chilling stuff, just seeing Captain America be this Tywin Lannister figure who just taps a little domino, and in the span of a single issue, all this stuff that's been built up over a fairly short run, really, it all kind of culminates and pays off. And it's all rendered really beautifully by Daniel Acuna. He's a guy who, I was first introduced to him in the Uncanny Avengers ongoing series that he did with Rick Remender. And he did, the Apocalypse Twin storyline, and his art does tend to look kind of rough around the edges. I feel like he's a guy who needs to take his time to really draw an issue out, to really bring out his best qualities, and when you rush him, his faces all look kind of the same, and they look overly rough. But this is easily some of the best work he's ever done for Marvel. This is right up there with his best stuff in Uncanny Avengers. And just the way he conveys the shadows over Captain America, and the way he's just with expert ease manipulating everybody, is pretty damn chilling stuff. The only guy who I think could have done this even better is Steve Epting, whose work is kind of defined by, shadows constantly being present, creating this kind of constant air of tension. But Daniel Acuna is a very worthy secondary choice for this role. If there's anything that I overly dislike about what I'm seeing about the Nick Spencer stuff right now, is a certain caveat in Secret Empire 0. Basically, there's a little prologue that explains that the Red Skull managed to kind of swallow Hydra whole, that Hydra wanted to use people like the Red Skull and the Third Reich as a tool for an end, and then the Third Reich and Red Skull just kind of screwed them over and took control of Hydra, and they twisted Hydra into a twisted perversion of himself, which is where, Captain America's, whole conflict with the Red Skull comes from. And because the Red Skull managed to do this, they win World War II. And so it's revealed that the Cosmic Cube was created by the Allies as a way to create a reality where Captain America beat the Red Skull, where the Allies win World War II. And I'm not really sure about this development yet. I like the idea of Captain America being the sole thing that was affected by Kobik, the female Cosmic Cube girl, because I just like the simplicity of it. And this feels like it does, because there are multiple times where like Spider-Man is like an agent of Hydra and Captain Marvel is an agent of Hydra. I really do feel like this just could have been like a last minute thing Marvel told them to include, because just for the sake of tie-ins, so that there's a point in the storyline where Captain America reverts everything to the way it's supposed to be, quote unquote, and so you just have a bunch of tie-ins where it's Spider-Man, but he's like Hydra Cap, or here's Captain Marvel, but she's Hydra Cap now. And so I don't know if Nick Spencer always intended to do that. The reveal of this whole thing feels like just an excuse to make a big, event thing where you can just have lots and lots of tie-ins that are capitalizing on the same concept of let's make all of our superheroes filtered through Hydra, which if they execute that shit the same way they executed Nick's Captain America being filtered through Hydra, that's going to be really interesting. That's going to allow for some really interesting stuff to happen. But because they are tie-ins to an event, they're going to be so shortchanged that I don't see them being able to execute these little examples of Hydrizing all the Marvel Universe in just like 4 or 5 issues at absolute best. So yeah, that does definitely feel like something that's just there to make a big universe event. When I feel like you just could have kept the whole conceit of Cap being the only alteration going and then seeing him affect the default Marvel Universe. I think that would have been perfectly fine in and out of itself. So yeah, the Nick Spencer Captain America run. It's actually one of the few examples I've seen of a storyline that combines the best things about the previous runs and actually really continuing on with them. And when you think about it, Captain America's actually had 3 really, really damn good consecutive runs for a decade. And if he has another couple of decades like this, where you just have really strong writers coming onto the character, doing interesting things with him, he could join the ranks of Batman and Daredevil as one of the most consistently well-written comic book characters, period. Because, it's fucking Daredevil and Batman, and they just always have really good shit being written about them at any point in time. So yeah, guys, what are your thoughts on Secret Empire or the Nick Spencer Captain America run? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you still salty about the fact that Captain America is a Hydra agent? What are your thoughts? Please comment, like down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.